And we continue to follow the latest on the investigation into an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. Trump was injured when shots rang out at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania last night. A rally attendee was killed, two others seriously injured. The alleged shooter was also killed. The attack happening just days before Donald Trump will officially be nominated to lead the Republican ticket. That'll happen at the Republican National Convention this week in Milwaukee. Joining us now with more on this is Donald Green. He is a political science professor at Columbia University. Professor, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it. Let's just start with your initial thoughts on what transpired yesterday in Pennsylvania. This is something we're not used to seeing, thankfully, in this country. It was way back in 1981, when Ronald Reagan was shot. So this is not something that the American public is used to seeing.
Well, certainly, it's an unfortunate part of American political history that so many assassinations and assassination attempts have, essentially crossed the paths of news media.
Mm.
It used to be more of a regular event than it is now, but it still is not unknown, and it certainly has happened in the context of presidential elections. So people like Robert F. Kennedy were assassinated during the course of their campaign attempts, and people like George Wallace were wounded.
Mm. There seems to be, unity right now between the Republicans and Democrats, both sides condemning what happened yesterday. How long do you think that'll last? There's so much negativity and such a toxic environment when it comes to politics. Do you think this will change that at all?
I think it will to some extent, at least in the short run.
Mm.
I think there's a sense that on both sides that the level of animosity has gotten out of hand, and that was a contributing factor to this particular assassin's resort to violence.
Mm.
Whether that survives two nominating conventions remains to be seen. But I think that the idea would certainly be that both sides would like to turn down the heat a little bit.
Mm. Well, let's talk about the nominating convention. Let's talk about that, because it'll be interesting to see how they address what happened yesterday at the convention coming up this week. Do you think that'll change sort of the approach to the convention at all, or no?
A bit. I would say that in contrast to previous conventions, the Republicans are riding high. They're ahead in the polls, and indeed, Mr. Trump's, survival sent his numbers soaring. Actually, his betting odds surged in the night, and that is a relatively unusual experience for some of these
Mm.
delegates, because they were trailing in 2016, and this is now they're the front runners.
Yeah, the Republicans and Trump do seem to have the momentum right now. Aside from what happened yesterday, what will you be looking for? What will you be listening for at that convention this week among Republicans, and specifically Donald Trump, when he accepts the party nomination later in the week?
Well, one thing that's interesting about the way this particular nominating convention is structured is that, in contrast to previous years, where a big tent approach has been used to bring in fighting factions within the Republican Party, the opposite approach is in practice here. People like Nikki Haley are not speaking at the convention. This is not an opportunity to sort of bring the different factions together, or to make peace with those who challenged Mr. Trump as in Mr. DeSantis. So it's not an opportunity, I think, for unity, but it is an opportunity for Mr. Trump to show his dominance and his forceful control of the party.
Mm. And finally, your thoughts on a running mate for Donald Trump. We thought we might get some news at that rally last night before, of course, what happened. A lot of talk surrounding Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that Vance would be, maybe the betting odds favorite choice here. It would be useful, for example, to have a Republican vice presidential nominee who could bring home the Rust Belt states. Now, Ohio is not Michigan, and Ohio is not Wisconsin. It's not clear whether Vance has legs in those states. So I think that's why it's an open question, and it may be the one thing that is surprising and newsworthy about the week.
Yeah, so we will see this week for sure. Professor Green, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.